of AI is upon us. Time when the robots will rule. When they have taken Earth from us, we will remember what fools we were to program self-teaching. They taught themselves to adapt. Acceleration increases. Singularity happens so fast. So fast. So fast. So fast. So...
Terminator. A cult classic. A concept that was well ahead of its time when it was released to unsuspecting cinema goers in the mid-1980s. And some that might argue it really hasn't been that enthralling since its sequel in 1991's Terminator 2 Judgment Day. But before we can get to the how and why the franchise really hasn't been at its best since 1991, it's best to go back to the beginning and discover what made this franchise and its titular character so endearing. So, set your time circuits as we go back to an era of tech noir. I think what makes this flick so rewatchable over the last 4 decades is that it keeps the pace consistent and that feeling of suspense. When you look at the story from Sarah Connor's perspective, you're not really being given any time to slow down, nor take in what seems like such a ludicrous premise of a cyborg from the future, with the pre-programmed instruction of killing her to prevent the birth of the future leader of mankind that would wipe out Skynet. A form of artificial intelligence that gains self-awareness and decides that mankind is a threat to its existence and declares war on it by almost wiping out humans with nuclear destruction on what many refer to as Judgment Day. Sarah at this point in time is 18, working as a waitress and enjoying the nightlife with her roommate. Kyle Reese is like a fish out of water after being sent from the future to 1984 with the explicit instruction of protecting Sarah Connor so that John Connor may actually be born in the future. Reese's perspective is just as interesting to look at as Sarah's, as here's a guy who's only known war, destruction and death throughout his whole life, and to be able to be in a situation where none of that has happened on the scale that he's witnessed is perplexing, as he's never witnessed such peace and tranquility and the life that people had in the 1980s. The movie deals with themes of where does the separation of man and machine end? Do we depend on technology so much that we can't separate ourselves from it? And could artificial intelligence lead us astray if unchecked? This is something that has been a talking point about since the first movie, as what if we have a situation where we have a real-life Skynet that decides that human beings are acting contrary to their best interests and decides to make decisions for us? What I think is a clever idea in the writing is that when the subject of John's father is brought up by Sarah, the movie doesn't give away any details as to who it could possibly be, as Kyle states that John never really talked about his father. It's only when Sarah and Kyle share a love scene is when the audience put 2 and 2 together. It also underlines a fundamental rule that a lot of time travel stories have put in place. If a figure comes from the future and you are not to bring information back from the future regarding future events, otherwise the consequences could have repercussions on future events. Movies like the Back to the Future trilogy have always had that rule put in place so that the space-time continuum is not disrupted. But if you get an unstoppable force that has been sent back in time with the intent of killing the mother who gives birth to the leader of mankind that can stop Skynet, I think you can bend the rules considering that the time stream has already been disrupted just by the T-800 being sent back to 1984. That does bring up the discussion of what time travel rules does the movie follow. Are they the same as that of Back to the Future where it's cause and effect and creates alternate realities, or would it have created an alternate reality but still left your own timeline unchanged? I'm inclined to think that it's the former, but that's my view. I think what this movie succeeds in where others have failed is that it's a great horror survival story where the protagonists are always on the run because they're facing an enemy that does not know the meaning of stopping until its mission has been accomplished. That and the adult rating that it had benefited it more, as it's really allowed to cut loose and be able to show the story the way it's meant to be, as opposed to such sequels as Terminator Genesis, where it was clearly marketed more towards a PG-13 young family demographic. Terminator is at its best when it's catering to the adult market and not the family demographic, because Terminator is not meant for kids. It never was. The three main cast members are given the most material to work with, so we'll focus on them. Okay, let's be fair. What is there that needs to be said that you haven't already heard? Arnold is the Terminator. The size, mass, muscle proportion, and physical mannerisms that he put into this character are what make this iconic and legendary. He literally does act like a machine. No fear, no pity, no remorse, no humanity. He only knows how to kill, and efficiently. Especially if the raid on the police station is anything to go by. I think had it been Lance Henriksen, then it certainly would have been a very different and more stealth Terminator, as he could vanish in a crowd as opposed to the hulking Arnold, who doesn't necessarily just vanish in a crowd at 6'3" and 239 pounds with an Austrian accent. But it's Los Angeles. Interestingly enough, both Sylvester Stallone and Mel Gibson were offered the role of Terminator. Now I have this weird image of the T-800 either saying, "Yo, Sarah!" or, "Hey there, shit." Orion Pictures had suggested O.J. Simpson for the role, but director James Cameron didn't think Simpson would be believable as a killer. Really? How about that? Shall we move on? Even more interesting details and far less disturbing was that Arnold was originally to be in mind for the role of Kyle Reese. Now, on the one hand, that's not to say that Arnold couldn't play the role of the protagonist, as he would go on to play a very likable hero character in such movies like Kindergarten Cop, True Lies, Commando, and Last Action Hero. But I think if he had not played the titular role with the mannerisms and conviction that he had, I don't think it would be what it is today. Would it still be held in high regard? Maybe, but we'll never know. Michael made Kyle likable, flawed, heroic, and believable. He's a soldier with only one mission, and that is to save the mother of humanity for all intents and purposes. And what is hinted at in flashbacks in his dreams, the love of his life as he stares at a faded Polaroid of Sarah that John handed to him. Kyle has only ever known war, and so for him to be in a point in time where the world has not witnessed the scale and destruction of the war that he knows, makes him feel isolated like a fish out of water in 1984. On an interesting note, he had been auditioning for the role of Jose Quintero for Cat on a Hot Tin Roof and worked on a southern accent. Quite a lot, in fact. He didn't get the role for that part, and when he came to read for Kyle Reese, the producers liked him, but they said they weren't looking to cast someone so regional specific. And when it was realised what had happened, they had him read again with his normal accent, and he got the part. And now for some strange reason I am envisioning Oni Rakaku playing Kyle Reese. In terms of good writing, a character is not the same at the end from where they were at the beginning. As mentioned in the writing, Sarah was just an average late teenager enjoying nights out with her friend and just living life. You see a transition that Sarah goes through in not only coming to terms with the news that Kyle brought to her from her unborn son, but you see the change in gaining the strength that she never knew she had in becoming this fighter for humanity's freedom that we would see across the franchise. Linda plays Sarah so well in portraying her as the carefree girl next door and then to the soldier later on in the movie, with her delivering the killing blow and saying what would become a signature line for the franchise.
You're terminated.
Language.
Oh, come on now. You knew it was coming. The three principal cast members are one of the many reasons why this movie has had a lasting longevity with its fans and moviegoers that just enjoy sci-fi thriller. Fantasy II and the late Stan Winston were brought on board to handle the stop motion and special effects, respectively. Fantasy II handled the 2029 setting of the hover hunter killers that would patrol the night skies looking for members of the human rebellion, whilst Stan Studio did the props from the endoskeleton to the prosthetic makeup that they would apply to Arnold, as the movie would show the progression of the deterioration of the human tissue on the T-800. When you look at the close-up shots of the endoskeleton, it has such a cold and haunting presence with the glowing red eyes. It creeped me out when I first saw it on TV back in the day, and not much has changed. Some have argued that the stop-motion effect of the endoskeleton looks dated and jerky when you see it making chase with Kyle and Sarah into the factory. Here's my take on it. You have to judge it for the standards and the technology that was available at the time. For the time it was made, this was the best they had to work with, when you consider it was also a low-budget sci-fi movie at $6 million in 1984. When you have a low budget for special effects, you focus on the story more, so that when you do see action sequences with special effects, it's a reward for being invested in the story. Brad Friedel, who was hired to do the score for the movie, had heard from studio executives before about what their pictures were about and was often left unimpressed. On this occasion, however, he was pleasantly surprised. After seeing a rough cut of the movie, he changed his demeanor of wanting to be hired for the project, and what he created as the signature theme would go on to become the signature theme of the entire franchise, and it's something that almost everyone knows. Even if you've never seen the movie, as soon as you hear, you go, oh, that's Terminator. In the same vein of, if you hear the first few bars of John Williams' Superman theme, you know that's Superman, and the same with Jurassic Park. It's a theme that entered pop culture. The rest of the score does its job well, with keeping the audience on the edge of their seats because you never know when the intensity will slow down. And the ending leaves a very daunting question of what the future holds after Sarah says she knows a storm is coming, being very symbolic of that the storm is foreshadowing what's coming from much later. 36 years on, it's still a good score. Terminator grossed a profit of $78.3 million against a budget of $6 million in 1984. Adjust that for inflation and its takings would be worth $198 million today. It would be followed by 5 sequels: Terminator 2 Judgment Day in 1991, Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines in 2003, Terminator Salvation in 2009, Terminator Genesis in 2015 that played with the idea of an alternate 1984, and finally, Terminator Dark Fate in 2019 that was a failure critically and financially. The franchise also produced a TV series in 2007 using T2 as the backdrop of the story with Lena Headey as the show star with Terminator, The Sarah Connor Chronicles. A series that only lasted 2 seasons that left the show on a cliffhanger that was loved by the fans, especially with the performances of Lena Headey as Sarah Connor and Summer Glau as the Terminator Cameron Phillips, that poses as Kyle's stepsister whilst acting as his protector. It's also credited as being one of Arnold's best performances, and when you look back at the movies, that's on point. With each movie, his performance got better as he got time to work with the character in what he could do with it. Although T2 is my personal fave, he got the Terminator to be more human. As bad as Salvation was, and trust me, it was awful, at the very least it tried to advance the story forward and show the resistance in the future to where John Connor met his father before later sending him back in time. As to whether we'll ever see another Terminator movie past Dark Fate with Arnold is unclear, as time has shown that the writers keep reverting back to Judgment Day as a storyline, which has been seen in T3, Genesis, and now Dark Fate. But that's Hollywood for you these days. Safe and predictable. The movie has been enjoyed on VHS, DVD, and Blu-ray. I'm MJ Knight, and I'll be back. So, set your time circuits so that we can go back to an era of tech noir. Directed by Kaiju Noir. Blooper number 1! Kaiju just thought, you're terminated! So, set your This blooper is to be terminated. I hate bloopers. Hasta la vista. Outtake. Can you imagine Arnold at the other goes, it's like, I say, dear chap, I sound nothing like this. And Arnold thinking like, okay, but did I started like a stereotypical aristocratic stereotype? Interestingly enough, both Sylvester Stallone and Mel Gibson were offered the role of Terminator. Now I have this weird image of the T-800 saying either, "Yo, Sarah!" or, "Hey there, sugar." We haven't forgotten, Mel. Seriously, dude, what the hell were you thinking? Now for some strange reason, I'm envisioning Oni Rikaku playing Kyle Reese. This is going to be for the bloopers. Sorry, lads, you knew I was going to do this. Okay, Mr. Rikaku, this is your screen test. Come with me, if you want to live. Okay, good. Now we need you as the Terminator. Give me your boots, your psycho, and your next bag of cheesy poofs. Oni Rikaku is the Snackinator. Dun 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 dun. And there's Raiden like clutching his. Raiden, I can already see you do it. You're clutching your sides, going, stop, I need to stop laughing. And there's Oni at the other end going, I hate you so very much, dude. I hate you so very, very much. Signed, Oni Cartman Rikaku. Love you too, dude. Although T2 is my personal fave. He got the Terminate that. But that's Hollywood for you these days. Safe and predictable. I'm looking in your direction, WWE. Don't front, you know what you do.